Pick it up. Here we go. In verse 8, Mark 10, here we go. It says, "Why do you call me good?" Jesus answered. "No one is good except God alone. You know the commandments. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony. You shall not defraud. Honor your father and mother." I want you to take a moment and read those things. And how many did Jesus reel off to him? Okay? 6, right? 6 of those things. Throws out 6 of those things to him. And this is interesting. He throws 6 of them to him. 6 things of the law. He says, "Do you know these things?" And this is what the man's response was. "Teacher," he declared, "all these things I have kept since I was a boy." Think about this. The God, Jesus, God in the flesh, says to him, he says, "You know what? Why do you call me good? Only God's good." He says, here's 7 little tidbits of the law. And what does the man say? He says, "I've been doing that since I was little. I've been doing those things all since I was little." Not, "Hey, I've tried," right? Like, "I've done a couple of them." But he says, "I've been doing all these things since I was little." You see, think about this. And I just throw out there, have you ever used the words, or in your passionate conversations, the words always and never? Have you ever done that? Let me throw it out here to you. Here's one. It says, "I have always told you the truth." Right? And you mean that in the moment, like, "I've always told you the truth." But the question is, have you always told the truth? Here's one. "I have never said anything bad about you." Like, never. Not even to myself. I've never done that. Or here's one. "Your dog always goes to the bathroom in my yard. My dog never does that sort of thing in yours." Like the always and never words. And what happens here is that I find it interesting that Jesus said this from a list. I mean, he doesn't give him the full law, right? Not even the 10 commandments. He shoots 6 of the things off his list and says, "Look at these things." And as he does that, the man's response, or at least what this man found what he found to be really sinful. See, why did Jesus do this? Maybe it's because of the fact this is what this man was dealing with. I mean, he knows he's Jesus, right? He knows the man's heart. So maybe he says, "You know what? He says, I've done all these things." Jesus says about honoring your father and mother. And he's got the guy who has his parents that call him at 6 o'clock on Saturday mornings to say hello, right? "Honor my father and mother." I kind of struggle with that. Or maybe he says, "You know what? This idea of murder." Because in Scripture it says, if you hate your brother, you've committed murder, right? And Jesus says, "You know what? You shall not murder." He says, "I've been working on this my whole entire life. Like, I've been honoring this since I was a boy." Maybe Jesus points this out to him because it's the things that he struggles with. Or maybe it's the things that this man finds to be, quote, sinful more than others. For example, I know the person who committed adultery. I mean, he's the guy at the watering hole that's got 6 wives or 6 girlfriends and the 7th's his wife, but nobody knows except for me, right? Or maybe what he sees in this, or what this man sees, is Jesus says this to him about giving false testimony or stealing. All these things, when it plays out, you see, I love what Jesus says in response to the man's response. Pick it up in verse 21, the beginning half. It says, Jesus looked at him in what, church? Loved him. Loved him. Now think about that. Jesus knows everything in that man's life. Not just what you heard. Not just what they told you. But he knows everything that's in that man's life. And it says he looked at him and loved him. In other words, his heart broke for him. Now, why would Jesus' heart have broken for this man? Why would it have broken for him? I mean, the reality is he's a tad bit spiritually delusional, isn't he? That he's done all these things since he was little. At least those 6 things. Maybe there's more that he's even working on. I wonder if it's because Jesus' heart broke because he knew what was next to come in the conversation. Because if we continue on, it says, Jesus says to him, "One thing you lack." Remember, back up, what's this man's question? What must I do to have eternal life? They're getting to the answer, right? And Jesus says this to him, "Go, one thing you lack," he said, "go sell everything you have and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me." Maybe this is why Jesus' heart broke, because here's the man's response. At this time, the man's face fell. He went away sad, and because he had great wealth. Think about that. Some of you right away go, "Well, this is good because I'm poor anyway, so it doesn't apply," right? Don't miss it. It's not about the money. It's about the heart. It's not about what you possess. It's about what you're willing to give to God in everything. You see, Jesus, in this moment, I say, wasn't this guy who just came and said, what must I do to inherit spiritual life or eternal spiritual life? You see, you think about it, this is a guy who was living in the Jewish culture at the time. As there was people there that they had the law from God, and all of a sudden some theologians and some historians would say that some of the Pharisees and Sadducees saw the law that God gave his people and said, you know what, that seems good, but we need more. So they added almost 3,000 more laws on top of the law that God gave them and expected other people to live up to those standards. This is what this Jewish man is living with. He's trying to live up to the law. He's doing everything he can do to see what he can do. And he finally sees the Son of God face to face. And he says, what can I do to inherit the kingdom of God? And what does he say to him? Go and give up everything. And he walks away with his face down and sad. You see, for some of you, it's very possible that's where you're at today. Is that you've come to know God, right? Like, this guy was a Jew. He knew God. The Jews were the chosen people. Like, we like God because God judges those who are bad and keeps those who are good safe, right? But the truth is, he comes face to face with Jesus. And for some of us, I think that's where you're at today. You've come face to face with Jesus. And by coming face to face with Jesus, you now see what Jesus is asking of you. He's not asking you to abide by all the laws. He's asking you to give all you have to him. Not just in wealth, but in your life, in your heart. You see, and for some, maybe that creates a little bit of an angst, and you even have the feeling that you're going to walk away a little bit sad. But I want to tell you something. It seems that before we follow Jesus, he does ask of everything of us. But can I tell you, the only way you will experience regret is if you turn and walk away. That's where regret will land. Because the truth is, your life is a current reality. Your current life is a reality. I haven't played video games in a while, okay? And the reason I haven't is because mine's broke, okay? My Xbox blew up. Also because I've gotten older and people have told me I shouldn't be playing video games, okay, right? I don't know if that's true or not, but since mine's broke, if anyone has one cheap to give, consider it a benevolent gift to God, and you can let me give that to me, all right? I say that kind of jokingly, but the truth is I remember we got our first video games game system when I was younger, probably 3rd grade. We got the original Nintendo. Anyone ever have the original Nintendo? 16-bit graphic of pure madness, right? It was flat and it had like really bad tonal colors, but you could make Mario jump any direction that you want, up, down, and around. And the B button, if you held it down, you ran really fast, right? I loved it because my mom could never get past the very first little Goomba guy on Mario 1. She would run right in bloop, every time. Like, all you have to do is jump over, Mom. But also I love the fact they had Duck Hunt. You know how you could put the gun on the screen and you shoot the ducks and they'd fall down and then the cartoon dog would go fetch the ducks for you and bring them back. It was a very cool thing. It was almost like you were really hunting, right? But the truth is and maybe for you it's not video games, maybe just think of the television. You remember the television we used to turn the knob to get it to fine tune? Did you remember that? And the reality is you had to get out of your chair to go do that? And go do that? And then you had the buttons, there was UHF, you had to flip the bottom one and tune it right. Now you don't do that, you just sit in your chair and turn the channel with your remote, or your flat screen that you bought for the Super Bowl, right? That's what happens. And so I remember the graphics in it, but now it's progressed so much in video games, it's almost real looking. I mean, it really is. There's a lot of things you can play and do and stuff, it's like you're living life in there. And I have to tell you, in some ways, the culture has put some things that are on our plate where we can actually experience life in a way that we think it's life, but it's not reality. And we buy into that it's a sense of reality. Where the truth is I want to tell you that Jesus died, and that's a reality. He rose on the 3rd day, and that's a reality. He died for reality, not a fake reality. Because for some, we see this man, he was a good guy. Can I say that? He seemed to be a pretty good dude. When's the last time someone came before someone and fell on their knees and kind of wept and said, I want to know more about Jesus, and was willing to ask that question? And Jesus gave him the response and he walked away. See, the reality of it is that he was looking back into his life. He looked backwards into his life. Because a rearview mirror can be a tad bit blurry. You see, I say that because we don't know what happens to this man exactly. We don't know if he went home. and came to terms with what Jesus asked of him and went and sold his stuff, hung out with another rich guy. They worked together and blessed the poor. I'm not sure. We don't know that. We don't know if he even went home and looked at the regret and all the things in his past life and said, you know what, this is bad. And he wept, but he never followed Christ. But I want you to know something, that because of the gospel message, it can be summed up. And it can be summed up with this short equation. And it is what Jesus died for. It's that one's past is less than one's future. Jesus believes that. He died for that. In fact, for this man, I believe this is why Jesus' heart broke, is because he knew that the man's future mattered. And where he was still living in a non-reality state, that his past was really important. And some of you go, I have had a really good past. Like, I've had to experience some good things. That's good. But Jesus didn't die just for your past. He also died for the reality that your future matters. See, as we close this message today, I think it would be fitting for us to read this passage from 1 Peter that we kind of started off with this series. Because the truth is, Peter, who authors this letter, it seems as though he could have been right there with Jesus as Jesus taught this to this man. And Peter's trying to sort it out. You know what I mean? I don't know if he says it vocally to Jesus, but it's kind of Peter's MO to kind of speak first and then resend it afterwards. Like, you really think he's supposed to give up everything to follow him? Like, he's supposed to look over those regrets and trust in you? And Peter pens this in 1 Peter 1, 13 through 16. He says, therefore, with minds that are alert and fully sober, set your hope on the grace to be brought to you when Christ is revealed at his coming. As obedient children. Remember, we talked about this passage the very first week. As obedient children, what did Christ call this man to? Obedience to the Father. And Peter writes about this, of what he experienced with Christ. He says, do not conform to the evil desires that you had when you lived in ignorance. Remember, I asked you if you've ever been called ignorant before? The reality is, Peter did. He said we're all ignorant if we don't know Jesus, or when we didn't know Jesus, now we live in the truth. We were living in ignorance. Verse 15 says, but just as he who called you holy, so be holy in all you do. For it is written, be holy because I am holy. Church, you know that the reality is regret is one of the things that gets in our way the most of allowing us to see our lives the way Christ sees our lives. Of the things we didn't do in the past, or things we wished we would have done, as we said before, or the things or just the relationships that didn't happen or they went awry. Can I tell you that your future is greater than your past? And that's what Jesus is calling us to. Because Jesus said he came to bring life, new life to us. And so to be holy, we are called to be holy, for he is holy. We bow this in prayer.